Life, it comes at us like a train with all its ups and downs, its pains and its joys. How do we deal with it? How do we process it? How how do what we learn from life, and especially what we teach life back in return, makes all of the difference. Welcome to Life Talks.
Yes. How do we cope? Let's talk about that because we have to manage it.
Right.
One of the symptoms that we just talked about in relationship to the impact of racism on mental health is the powerlessness, that hopelessness. You know, we've protested, we marched, we rallied, we've written letters, we spoke at Congress, we called our local council people and aldermen. We did all of that. And so now we have these riots, that are spinning out of control where we have the United States on fire. That's that powerlessness that says, you didn't hear me before.
Right.
But you're going to hear me now.
Learn today. That's the term.
You're going to learn today.
Yeah.
Folks are burning things to a crisp. So to look at that, we need to learn where to put all this emotion and energy. Because I dare not say that we should deny it and say that it doesn't affect us. That, in the first place, would be faulty thinking.
Normally, if you feel like you're not being heard, you're speaking soft, you're gonna raise your voice. Kids do that. They hear mommy not listening, they'll raise their voice until they're at the top of their voice screaming, mommy, there's the video, listen, Linda, listen,
Linda, listen.
And Linda's not listening, so you yank and then you get a little bit more aggressive. So people can understand that this is unresolved frustration. This is unresolved anger. This is a sign. This is disrespect. That humanity is not listening to the cries of humanity. Anybody would, because we start from children. We do things so that we will be heard. And the minute we know you've heard us, all of a sudden it's like, okay, you heard me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's talk about how we cope with some of these things.
Yeah.
One is lessen the amount of times or the intake of the news.
Okay.
There has to be a boundary there.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch it in the morning, leave it alone.
Watch it at night.
Right. You don't need to read everything that pops up on the phone, on the timeline, all day long. I know here in Connecticut we have News 12.
Well,
Yep, and then we have WTNH. We have CNN that go all day. That's all they do. That's right. So that's all day. And like I said, every time there's an update, there's a new headline. It could be one line that's changed, but they're going to reprint all over again.
Make it huge.
Right. So let's lessen the intake of the news.
Mm-hmm.
That find value and comfort in the things that we normally like to do. So we still have to be mindful. We're still in COVID.
Right.
Right. We're still in quarantine. So we have to be mindful of that. However, take a walk. You can sit outside. I know a lot of states have partial reopenings. Here in Connecticut, we do. We're actually moving into phase 2 in 2 days. Wow. Where gyms, museums, movie theaters, like outside is about to be open. And we're on, so I'm not encouraging that either. Let's just be clear. But there's alternatives to watching the news. We can read.
Right.
Garden. It's beautiful. This is mid-June. So there's things that can occupy our time other than the news. Whatever we like to do, let's indulge in it outside of the intake or watching the news all day.
Mm-hmm.
The news will keep you on edge. They want ratings and viewership, right? However, but it's not good for our psyche. It's not good for our mental health. Mm-hmm. And a part of watching the news or shows that continually show the killings of Black and brown people, right? It's a term called vicarious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I will give you an example of what vicarious trauma is. I'm going to give you the example that you just gave me, actually, with your son.
Mm-hmm.
Going out and you're on your knees. You're like praying. Why? Because you've seen what happens to Black and brown boys, girls, women, children. You've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So internalized, you said, oh God, now I got anxiety. This is going to happen to my kid. I got to pray and cover him.
Right.
That's vicarious trauma. We have taken on what we've seen or heard, internalized it.
Mm-hmm.
It then has made us a little hypervigilant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, how do I combat this?
Right.
So that this doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So now our sensory system, we're like raised, is heightened. And so we go into this mild panic attack. We go into this panic mode every time our babies leave the house. Mm-hmm. That's vicarious trauma. I can show you, there's plenty of examples. It's another term for vicarious trauma is secondary trauma.
Right.
It didn't
That's
happen
I
to
know.
me.
Right.
Okay, there we go.
I
it
know
didn't happen to me, but I'm affected by it.
Right.
So
and it's
here,
because it's close enough to me that it could happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a likeliness that, this is possible. Mm-hmm. It hasn't happened to me yet, but I'm going to allow what has happened or what I have seen to alter how I think and or move. So it's like you said, it's that praying, it's that anxiety coming up in you. These are symptoms of secondary trauma. As if it happened to you, now I got to do some course correction.
Right.
It hasn't happened. Oh, but there's a likeliness. And if it does, what do I do?
And I think what makes it worse is because we're still actively involved in it. It's the danger has not been averted per se. So it's not like he leaves the house once. He leaves the house every day. It's like a twilight zone. It is circling back every time he leaves the house, and the probability is still there, or the danger could possibly be there. It's reoccurring every single. So like you're in a warp zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a war zone.
Yeah.
Like you're leaving again. You become anxious. Right. Absolutely, what it is. It's that narrative, or the narrative of what has happened to someone else applied to your life. And here's the sad thing. If it happened to random Black and brown people, right? Who's to say it won't happen to us?
Right.
So we're heightened. That affects our mental health. Right. Mm-hmm. The stress, the anxiety, the depression of it, the powerlessness, because you can't stop your son from leaving the house. You can't stop necessarily what's going on. You want him to live. So what do? Like you said, we're on our knees. We're praying. God, keep them covered.
Are we locking them in the house? We're preventing them from leaving, which is not healthy either.
No, it's not. Because that's the dysfunctional, because really we can't lock them up.
Yeah.
We want them to live a safe, happy a safe, happy life, but it's like, but stay in this house and we'll figure it out.
So what's flashing before my mind are the slaves on the plantations, and kind of going through the same thing. If you've heard of one slave that has gotten beaten or lynched, or he didn't come back, and it's because they were and they were in the cotton fields or so forth. The whole community every morning when you leave, you don't know who's coming home, or if they're coming home, how they're coming home. And that is the same thing. You just live in this state of who's next. Is it my home next? Her home next? And you're kind of looking at each other like, when we leave in the morning, should we say goodbye? Because we don't know. That's what I was feeling inside as you were describing that.
It's accurate. Dr. Joy DeGruy, she is the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And I have the book,
Okay.
Read it.
Okay.
Read it.
We'll get
digest it. She theorizes that we all, as Black people with ancestors who have gone through slavery, have post-traumatic slave syndrome. Mm-hmm. That what we see now triggers something in us, mm-hmm. while it hasn't happened to us, but it triggers something because it's in our DNA of what happened to
our DNA change you talked about.
Right, the DNA remembers something. So now it's like, wait, what is going on? Why am I having such a visceral
reaction,
emotional response to this? It's because, my DNA is that of my ancestors who were slaves. And so that syndrome that she talks about, it has so many components, but it plays out into how we react now and how we respond to these racial conditions and or situations that we're in right now.
I want to use the word even assimilations that somehow mimic it, and our bodies is like, yep, sounds about right, feels about the same, and boom, we're off.
And that's what her book posits. It's like down through the generation, from a clinical standpoint, if I know that trauma impacts the brain, mm-hmm. the brain will dictate our behavior and it changes our DNA. There's physical research out there that says that our DNA is changed due to trauma. And so we're passing it down from generation to generation. That means our DNA recognizes this type of trauma. Mm-hmm. And so now we respond and it affects our mental health. It affected the mental health of the slaves. They had no counseling back then.
Right.
We still struggle now in 2020 with Black people, both men and women, engaging in mental health services.
Right.
Because there's a distrust there of the mental health system, which mm-hmm. falls under which falls under the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. So there's a distrust. So it's like, no, we're just going to deal with it.
Right. And I shouldn't say no coping skills, but the coping skills were not healthy coping skills. It helped them make it through, and they use other ways of, whether it's their faith or whatnot, to help them get it through. But getting through and processing it and healing from it are two different things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe they were in survival mode.
Right.
Coming out of slavery, entering the Jim Crow era, it was time to survive. Mm-hmm. And when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to heal and process. We are trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's one of the symptoms of racism. When we go into survival mode, we're not thinking about healing. We're not thinking about processing things. How do I survive?
Right. I was reading this morning about the Tulsa massacre.
Yes.
All right. And again, I didn't watch it. I read through it because the anniversary had just passed. And I'm coming from, you are African American, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I am from Caribbean descent. So a lot of it for me is education, because Sister Girl, it ain't in the books, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not in the books. It's not in the books. It's not being taught. And what was really interesting about it was that years later, people who live there now are going to school outside of Tulsa in classrooms where professors are telling them about what happened to their great-grandparents and so forth. And they're saying, no, I live in Tulsa. I came from Tulsa. They didn't tell us that. We don't know anything about that. And so seeing this now and knowing that we haven't even fully recognized or that didn't go viral. We didn't have that information there. But now it's being unearthed because with this new awakening and awareness of the this prejudicial system and this social justice just chaos. Now all these stories are being unearthed, and as I read it, I tend to put myself in the story. So I am experiencing it. And every detail of what went down that day, I'm sitting here like, I was bawling. Yeah. And I'm like, how is it that in a country that quote unquote is so quote unquote educated, we are so uneducated? We really don't know what's going on in the real America. We are seeing like the movies. They give us a picture of something and you don't even know you're on set. It's not even real. You are in a studio. You are not in real life.
So let's talk about the Tulsa massacre. It actually happened 1921, where they burned down Black Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't find that out until the beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. This is 2020.
Right.
99 years ago. But 99 years ago, we were up and coming, had our own Black Wall Street.
Yep.
Right?
Own hospital, own everything.
We had our own Black community that we frequented and were thriving. They burnt it down. And by they, I say the white people.
Yeah.
They burnt it down. Black Wall Street was never rebuilt. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to education, I didn't learn this in high school. I didn't learn this in elementary school. I did not learn it in college. And I've had plenty of degrees.
Right.
So I learned this, like I said, it was the top of this year, 99 years ago, that we had our own Black Wall Street, that it was burned down. Blocks was burned down in Tulsa.
And the people massacred.
Right. And massacred and never rebuilt.
And
it was never rebuilt. And so when we're talking about being educated by a whitewashed education system, when you have textbooks that were written by white people, you get their version of what happened.
Right.
It isn't until this year, it was this is June, probably last year, it was voted on that we will now have Hispanic and Black education, or African American core education in our school system. It is 2020.
Yeah, this is a mind blowing. It's mind blowing, and it's almost interesting because we chuckle, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, what other emotion do we have? Because it's so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's almost comical that this is where we are, and we think we're so educated, educated in all things.
And it's self-education. So when we have to dig deeper, it's usually people with advanced degrees that's digging deeper to say, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
What happened in this era? What happened here? Mm-hmm. Because the basic education that the school systems are providing for our children are not adequate.
Right.
To teach lineage information, to teach history. July 29th, 2008, apologizing for the enslavement and racial segregation of African Americans. Congress issued an apology acknowledging slavery. So this is recent. This is within the last 4 to 5 years that Congress issued an apology for slavery.
And I'm going to be petty for a second. What's in an apology? What is an apology going to do?
An apology is change behavior.
Correct.
So
and making up for it and helping to correct all of what that did. People are talking about the reparations, and Congress ain't trying to do that.
No,
The
there
cost
were.
is too heavy.
If I'm not mistaken, yet again, I better shut my mouth because we're going to keep going down to a history lesson.
Right.
Reparations were paid to other minority groups or groups that have gone through, like the Holocaust victims and things like that. But of course, never paid to us.
That's what I'm saying.
No, oh no, not because there's still that racism and that superiority.
Mm-hmm. But slavery has not been abolished. It has just been reconfigured.
There you go. It's that overt and covert.
Yeah.
It's built into systems. And so in dismantling those systems, and I'm not even saying, defund the police. I hear, the talk now is defund the police. And once again, I'm not for or against it just yet. Mm-hmm. I don't have an informed opinion about it just yet. However, what I will say is that I hear a lot, this system is broken. And I stand to correct people when they say that. The system is not broken.
This is how it was originally set up. It functions just fine.
Right. It functions for the people who it was built for. It was not made for us. Yeah. So now we seek shelter or want to seek shelter under a system that was not made to protect us. Right. And this is going all the way back to the Constitution.
Right.
We the people. That's not us.
People, right.
Let's just be clear. We are not the people they're referring to.
Correct.
It was
we were not identified as people or human. We were not even called human at that time. So the people weren't the people. We were the animals. We were the dogs in the street. So it wasn't
property. We were property. So we the people. Y'all don't quote that. That ain't us. That ain't us.
Right. Right. And it's those hard conversations where, when you have to say, sister girl, brother man, sit down for a second, and here is the cold, hard truth. What you're fighting for wasn't yours to begin with.
Right.
And it is not in this context, it's not yours. So what you need to be fighting for is not necessarily this. They won't give it back to you. They have made sure to ensure that this stays within their heritage, their lineage, for their children. And all the little fires that we've seen where we would try to get a piece of it, eventually it will be taken back in some other systemic way, because at the end of the day, they're not going to open the gate for us to come and take what they believe was theirs. We helped build it and we helped make it nice for them, but it's not ours.
Right. And that's the important, it's not ours.
Yeah.
And so when I say, we need to fix the system, no, we need to dismantle the whole thing and rebuild a new one. Mm-hmm. How is a whole different talk in and of itself, because we're talking about systems crashing, pulling them down to the ground. Yeah. So all of it, like I said, all of this is holistic and impacts our mental health.
Can we say, hey, find yourself a good therapist and start getting on the road to healing and recovery, or dealing with having those hard conversations, because it's a lot of pain that's going to be unearthed.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't want to feel that pain. We're afraid of that pain because we feel we're going to die from it. We feel it's going to overpower us. We don't know if we'll recover from it. But even you saying, look, that thing is reshaping our DNA. I have children. I have passed down the unresolved, the effects of the unresolved trauma in my life to my 3 children. And if they're not going to address it, it will reshape their DNA again and continue to pass down. To me, that's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do about it?
Right.
Who do we find that we trust, that will understand? Because quite frankly, I'm not trying to cause any burdens of fire, but the honesty about it is that I'm not I can't go to a white therapist
Mm.
to get the understanding of what I've been through or my people have been through. And to get that. Now, not saying that there are not some that are
Understood.
that understand, but I could relate and understand to individuals who push for blacks to go to a black therapist who understands and who knows how to help guide that. It really is a matter of life and death, to be honest with you.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe if we don't, first of all, if we don't address what we feel about anything, whether it's racism, politics, whatever weighs on us, if we don't have somewhere to put these emotions, we internalize them, we're going to implode. Yeah. It's going to start
explode.
To
both
implode. But that's when it begins to have effects on our physical health.
Right.
So there's a correlation between the mental health and the physical health. And when we begin to internalize the things and don't seek healthy outlets, we implode. High blood pressure, cholesterol, headaches, sleepless nights, not eating properly, weight gain, headaches, you name it, joint aches, you name it, your hair start falling out. You can't. All of it, and all of that can come from the underlying issues of mental health.
Right. And you will not find a doctor to find any diagnosis because it's not medical in that.
And once they rule out that it's not medical, they're like, you need to go talk to somebody.
Right.
It's like, this ain't my area. You need to go talk to somebody. But, so here's my thing. Let's first admit that we are affected by racism. Mentally, that it weighs on us, that we feel a way. Own how we feel. It's okay. It's okay. 2, find an outlet. So we talked about the healthy coping skills, right? Get out, turn the news off, drown it out, put a boundary on it. If you want that you have to listen to the news, listen to it, okay, but then move on. Find someone to vent to. Find somewhere where you can have authentic, transparent conversation. Honestly, that can be a therapist if it goes really deep. Or that can just be a good girlfriend and say, listen, let me tell you.
Right.
You gotta have an area and a supportive group of people or person to dump. You can't let it, we can't push it down and let it fester. Let's get it up. We gotta get it somewhere in a safe environment.
Right.
And usually in those environments, if you pick the right people, you will hear, you are not alone.
Right.
And those words go a long way from thinking, I'm the crazy one.
Right.
The you are not alone combats the loneliness that we talked about earlier. Feeling isolated. You're like, I get it because I felt this, and this.
Right.
And so we do something with all of these emotions. So we set healthy boundaries for people, including those who may have racially transgressed against us, that may have offended us in some way. Put a boundary on them. I won't tolerate this.
Right.
Period. Like, I'm not going to tolerate this. So we move on.
Right.
So there's things that how we can combat it. Guard your mind and your heart. That's Bible.
Right. This is good. I mean, there's so much depth to this, and we can talk about this all day. But I'm really grateful that we were able to at least cover the topics. Of course, I know you'll come back, so I don't even need to ask, because I know that we'll have more to talk about. But I really appreciate it. And again, I know we haven't scratched the surface, but I feel that we needed to say something. And part of the hearing is we hear you because we're experiencing the same things. Yes. And the gift that I have is to have sisters and brothers who are experts in certain fields that we can come and say, here, let's talk about it. And take the next steps. Now that you recognize that something may not be okay, take the next steps for your healing. So we'll see you next time. Okay? Bye, Tosh.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Life Talks. I hope that you were inspired and that you have felt a rejuvenation in your life. And I hope that what you are saying right now is that the answer that you are given to what life has thrown at you is that I am still here. Email us with your Life Talk ideas at mylifetalkstv@gmail.com. See you next time.